Hey everyone, how's it going? This is the Ball Metal Nerd coming at you with another wonderful, wonderful vid. Obviously, you know what this one's going to be about. It is about the 2010s in music, basically what happened this decade, basically the trends we saw, and where I see trends going maybe over the next 10 years as we enter the 2020s. This is my penultimate or second to last video of the year. I feel as we reach these milestone years, like new decades, the whole nine yard, it's worth taking a look back, just seeing where we've been and see where we're going. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and just dive right into this whole stink fest that we're about to go into. So, what are some of the broader, I would say, industry trends that we've seen over the past 10 years, 2010 to, 2010 to 2019. Well, one thing I would say probably the biggest change that happened in the 2010s is the now some of basically the extreme rise of streaming services. Now, I'm pretty sure Pandora and a few others existed in the 2000s. But they really started to gain massive popularity in the 2010s. And I think that is really before this device that I'm about to show off, before these became mainstream, streaming services, I don't think really had much of a chance. But when this device, which I would say this device, the smartphone, has probably had more influence over the 2010s than any other device, period. This is the most important technological change we've seen in the 2010s. And why do you say that? You're like, well, we had smartphones before the 2010s. Why aren't you saying they're the device of the 2000s or the 90s or however far back you want to go, right? Well, the reason I say that is the 2010s are when smartphones really went from being a very small kind of niche item to everybody and their grandma has a smartphone now, right? I personally got on the smartphone train in 2012 because that was the first time I was able to purchase one for a reasonable cost. I bought my first smartphone for $200. I was able to get my monthly service at a reasonable cost. I got like data, text, and talking for like 35. And prior to that, I wasn't able to find a smartphone plan that was that reasonable that included data, because I remember when smartphones were a quote fairly new thing. You had to pay like $30 a month just for the data, and there was no way in hell I was doing that. So that's why it took me so long to get a smartphone. But at best, I would have been a year earlier, maybe, or a year later. So and around that time, that's when I really noticed literally everyone starting to get them. Because before that, you definitely would see them, but not everywhere. And then after, it seems roughly that time period, they just everywhere. I mean, across the entire world. So because of that, with the smartphone and the always-on connectivity, you could obviously that enabled streaming services to work wherever you were, hence the explosion of popularity of the devices and why MP3 players, or at least standalone MP3 players, are now most definitely a niche product, that you only use sometimes. So anyway, that is probably the biggest industry trend that has happened this decade, bar none, for music. Another one that's happened, of course, is due to this device, we saw another music delivery how can I put this? Music listening service really decline, and that, of course, I am talking about the radio. Um, you know, even prior to the 2010s, I never listened to the radio. I have a few articles I will link in the description below and about the radio. One of the articles says, to the surprise of no one, basically it's declining worldwide massively. And for some reason in the article, they focus a lot like on Gen Z people, which I think is funny. They're like, well, radio has failed to catch on with Gen Z and blah, blah, blah. And they keep talking about this younger generation as if they're super unique and special. It's like, no, I'm way older than that, and I think radio sucks. I think radio sucked for, 30 years now, maybe more, I don't know. It's been bad for a really long time, and the sooner it goes away, the better. And then there was another one of the articles is titled, let me just bear with me here, guys. I find it an amusing title, so I'm going to read it to you. Shoot. It says, would you care if music disappeared from FM radio? You may only have a decade to save it. My response to that is, hell no. And one of the choice quotes from the article, and I'm paraphrasing here because I'm not going to have it up, is basically, for people who primarily listen to radio for music, they have moved on. But people see radio as more of a full flower experience and enjoy it, including the ads. Who the hell enjoys the ads? Another interesting thing in there was the statistics of how much people listen to radio. It said that the average adult in the U.S. listens to radio for 102 minutes a day. I don't purposely listen to the radio 102 minutes a year, let alone in a day. For me personally, the only time I will turn on the radio is if there's some sort of a local emergency situation and I'm trying to hear information about it. Aside from that, I literally never will choose to listen to the radio, ever. Never. Just doesn't even cross my mind because it's so bad. But I know, and it says the majority of music listening happens in people's cars. Duh. I mean, that's kind of a no duh because not everyone has Bluetooth in their car yet. I kind of get it if you're stuck with Bluetooth. Or I'm sorry, just stuck with maybe just a CD and radio and nothing else. But if you have Bluetooth, I can't imagine why you would ever waste your time with the radio. But I'm getting kind of sidetracked here. I guess I will say one more thing that I thought was surprising. It said like 30% of people's listening is done at home. I'm like, really? Who the hell listens to the radio at home? I can kind of see in the car, and I can kind of see at work if somebody puts it on as background noise. Okay, those things I kind of understand the scenarios. But when you're sitting at home, you're going to choose to listen to the radio? That makes no sense to me. So if you are one of those weirdos, please put in the comments below when you listen to the radio at home, why you do, the whole 9 yards. I'd really be interested to hear about it. So anyway, that kind of does bring me to my next little section of the video, and that I'm going to talk a little bit about listening habits, and I am going to talk about a trend that started in the 2000s and accelerated even more in the 2010s to the surprise of no one. I am talking about the decline of this format, the CD, right? This really started in the 2000s. This is not just the 2010s. And I think it started, of course, because of downloading, P2P, sharing, all that stuff. So CD sales really started to decline in the 2000s, and it just got even worse in the 2010s. A lot of major retailers have stopped carrying CDs now. Best Buy recently stopped, and that was a huge thing because I remember a while back Best Buy was a great place to get CDs. Now they don't carry them anymore. Of course, they were kind of mediocre throughout the 2010s because by the 2010s, their selection had greatly reduced. A lot of the music chain stores are gone. A few are hanging on by a thread here in the U.S. FYE's hanging on by a thread, but at least here in my city, the Cincinnati area, there's definitely fewer FYEs than there used to be, which is a shame because I like to go in there. Hell, that's where I got my turntable, but that store is now gone. Which conversely brings me to my next point. and that is the rise, of course, of this format, vinyl, right? Now, the vinyl revival started a bit in 2007, picked up steam in the 2010s, so it's a bit of a contradiction. One physical format declining and another one increasing. But vinyl is never going to be like uh, this giant force like it used to be. You're never going to see like sales of billions and billions of records a year. Or I'm sorry, hundreds of millions of records or whatever. This is not going to happen. We're here in the digital age. Yeah, I think records will be a niche or continue to be a niche. And I can definitely see CDs going the niche direction. I think the CD era in physical retail will truly be over when Walmart finally decides to stop carrying the things. When that happens, and I can easily see that happening sometime in the 2020s, it would not surprise me in the least. And if that does happen, I think the only way you'll be able to get CDs at that point is going to be either in like record stores, like local record stores, because there ain't many chains left. The record stores that seem to survive are the local ones, ironically, and or like Amazon or eBay or whatever online. So I think those will be the only way you'll be able to get CDs sometime in the 2020s. It would not surprise me if that were to happen. And I think we're just going to see the continuation of that trend. I mean, that's not brand new to the 2010s, but it definitely accelerated in the 2010s. The next thing that happened in this decade, really to the surprise, again, of no one, is some of the technology used for listening to music has changed. This decade, sound bars have replaced stereos for a lot of people in their homes, right? Sound bars are just I kind of get it. They are, quote, much more convenient than a standard amp and speakers and all that. They're an all-in-one design. They're simpler, yada, yada, yada. There's just one problem with sound bars, in my opinion. They all pretty much sound like shit compared to a comparable amp and speakers. Now, I know that doesn't matter to people. They care about convenience much more than audio quality. Hell, I'm working on a review right now for a product where the audio, I bought it for its convenience, not its audio quality. I'll probably put it up early next year, but it's definitely sound quality on this one thing I'm doing. So I get that, but I don't get, if you're really wanting to listen to music, I don't get listening to it on a device like that. Another piece of technology, I don't even own one of these, never have, is a smart home speaker, like a Amazon Echo or an Apple HomePod or whatever. There's a million of them. Personally, I wouldn't bother with those either. I don't need to talk to my speakers. They're not my friends. And they don't sound particularly good either. I know sound quality is not on most people's radar, but man, those are really poor substitutes for proper, decent equipment. But whatever, I guess that's what a lot of people are into, and that has definitely been a thing that is, happened. Now, of course, on the flip side of that, we now see a lot of, thanks to YouTube specifically, there are lots and lots of people doing reviews of high quality audio equipment. I mean, it's all over the place. So a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Contradiction there. Now, I have no idea if the sales of stereo equipment and all that is, if it's helping those reviews. They might be. Hopefully, we'll see. But anyway, now we're going to talk about the last piece that I feel is relevant to this discussion. That, of course, is just the changing musical landscape as far as genre goes. So, like, what's popular? What are people listening to, right? So, again, I think what we're seeing, what we saw in the 2010s, is largely a continuation of what we saw in the 2000s. pop music, the electronic crap just dominates, and is continuing to dominate, and has now to the point really diluted rock in the mainstream. Now, I know rock in the underground is thriving. This is not meant to say rock and roll is completely dead, because it's not. But in the mainstream, it's definitely on life support. Because right now, Imagine Dragons are one of the leading rock bands. And I put that in severe air quotes because I don't find Imagine Dragons to be remotely rock. To me, if you're going to be rock, you have to have very prominent guitars, and they do not. They're sometimes somewhat entertaining pop music, but they don't sound like a rock band to me. 21 Pilots is another example. I'm going to link to, also in the video description, I will link to probably one of the most depressing videos I've ever watched in my entire life, where they were talking about the future of, or at least the potential future of rock, and it's just more of that electronic stuff, and it's mostly, it's just not good. It's just really crappy stuff. Now, it could just be the fact that I'm an old man yelling at a cloud. I acknowledge that, but yeah. I mean, who's our greatest hope? Greta Van Fleet, the Led Zeppelin ripoff? Ha ha ha. So anyway, in conclusion, where do I see things going in the future? Well, I think a couple of trends are obviously going to continue. I think radio will probably completely die, except for maybe talk radio and news and stuff. I think it's going to die sometime in the 2020s. Maybe it'll stretch to the 2030s, but not. I don't really see it going past that. I think technology will probably continue to go in a similar direction it's been going. Physical formats will just become a total niche. I mean, they're already basically there, but they'll become a total niche product. And as far as what I think is going to happen with musical genres, I don't know. That's a little more unpredictable. Maybe rock at some point will more return to its roots and resemble more of what we think of as rock and roll. I don't know. I hope it does. We'll see. Time will tell on that one. Oh, and one last thing that I forgot to bring up is in the 2010s, obviously a lot of old rockers died. Not surprising. This isn't a trend. This is just the passage of time. This has nothing to do with anything but that. Crap load of them died in the 2010s. Obviously, it's going to happen again in the 2020s. There's no outrunning the Grim Reaper for these guys. I mean, a lot of them are in their 70s at this point, 60s, 70s, whatever. And obviously, this is just going to be something that is continually happening until, I guess until rock stops and all the old rock gods have died. So that's just something where it continues. So anyway, if you agree, disagree, think I left something out, whatever, let me know in the comments below. I'd be interested to hear your guys' take on the past decade in music, what you thought of it, whatever. So anyway, that's it. As always, if you like this crap, thumb it up, because that will help me out, I guess. If you don't, but live long and prosper. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.